What up, Space Fam? Goes in here from Anime Uproar, back at it again with another One Piece video. Just as I did a similar video for Shanks, I thought it was about time to do one for his swordsmanship rival Mihawk, especially considering the crazy new developments about his character, his true strength, his bounty, and more. Crazy stuff in this video, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Channel the Pirate King within and smash that like button if you enjoy seeing these One Piece videos on the channel and want to keep them coming. And if you do smash it, legend has it that YouTube will reward you with on-screen fireworks straight from Wano. Give it a shot. Make this the video you subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications or you will miss future One Piece videos and updates. Now I want to thank Warframe for sponsoring this video. Warframe just released its 50th Warframe called Styanax, a mythical javelin and shield wielding warrior, and all players can get him for free for a limited time only. Warframe is a cooperative, free-to-play, third-person online action game with more than 70 million players on PC, Xbox Series X, PS5, Nintendo Switch, and more. I was blown away by the detailed and smooth graphics in Warframe as I quickly made my way through stages, completing missions, defeating enemies with different weapons of choice from swords to throwing knives to machine guns and more. This game is amazingly customizable as you can complete missions any way you like, whether it's by sneaking past some opponents or whether it's by just taking down every single one you see with your chosen Warframe and favorite weapon. If you love shonen battle anime and watching Zoro and Mihawk slash through opponents, then chances are you'll love this game where you're the protagonist. Styanax will only be available for free for a limited time, so use my link now to download Warframe, log in to claim Styanax before this offer expires on September 21st, and you can even watch the Styanax anime short created by Passion Paris, who also worked on hit animation projects like Love, Death, and Robots. So what are you waiting for? Become a space ninja like me and enjoy the fast-paced and smooth gameplay of Warframe while unlocking the awesome Styanax. All you gotta do is click the link in the description to download Warframe today. And now, without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. The 43-year-old Dracule Hawkeye's Mihawk holds the title of the strongest swordsman in the world. In the past, he was known as the Marine Hunter, which is hype and leads me to believe that that's why they wanted him to become a warlord. He was known to be Yonko, Shanks' rival, the living Yonko with the highest current bounty at over 4 billion berries. He went on to create the organization Cross Guild with Crocodile. Although Mihawk and Crocodile are the true leaders, Buggy serves as the figurehead for the organization, and we'll get into more of that later. And despite this, despite the fact that he's not the leader as far as anyone knows, our boy Mihawk has a shockingly large bounty of 3.59 billion, very close to Shanks's and larger than Buggy's, despite the fact that he's not even a Yonko, or the leader as far as anyone knows of that organization. I mean, when it was revealed, the dude had a bounty higher than the 3 other Yonko aside from Shanks. It's crazy, so let's look back and see how we got to this point and how strong Mihawk truly is. 41-year-old Mihawk debuted way back during chapter 49, that's over 1,000 chapters ago at this point. During chapter 50, we see that Don Krieg, the big bad guy of the arc, is scared of Mihawk, who is introduced as the greatest swordsman in the world. We also see that Zoro wants to take him on for the first time. He wants to beat him and become the greatest swordsman himself, but as we know now, he wasn't even close to being ready, and that's an understatement. Even Mihawk's vessel, which is pretty much a glorified chair, lets you know how strong he must be. Most people have crews and still get wrecked, like Krieg and his men did in the Grand Line, and this dude is confident enough to just travel by himself through the sea and Grand Line in, like I said, what is pretty much a glorified floating chair. Zeph, who knows of the master swordsman, isn't even surprised by the fact that he wrecked a huge galleon with a sword. When asked why he was picking on Krieg's crew, he replies for fun. He effortlessly deflects bullets with his sword. It's clear that, as Zoro points out, shooting at him is useless. Zoro comments that he's never seen such subtle sword work, to which Mihawk replies, without subtlety, a sword is but an iron bar. I also love when Zoro asks him if he did split the galleon with a sword, and Mihawk replies, of course, like it's the easiest thing in the world. Zoro asks to fight him, but Mihawk calls him pathetic and a weakling. He says that if Zoro was a competent swordsman, he wouldn't need to cross swords to know that Mihawk far surpasses his puny skills. He wonders if Zoro is confident or just ignorant, and Zoro replies his courage comes from ambition ambition and from a promise to a friend. Mihawk decides to use a small blade around his neck to deal with Zoro, who already has his own reputation at this point as the infamous pirate hunter Zoro. As Mihawk says, he's not the kind of fool who hunts rabbits with a cannon. Yeah, he straight up calls Zoro a harmless bunny compared to himself. He even apologizes for not having a smaller knife, as if Zoro doesn't even deserve the small blade. Mihawk, to use his own words, shows Zoro and us just how big the world is. Yeah, Zoro was a big shot in East Blue, but Mihawk stops his 3 blades with his small one. Everyone is shocked, especially Zoro, who comments on how they can't be this unequal. The gap can't be this big. Mihawk is clearly having no problem with Zoro despite using a toothpick of a blade, and even puts down Zoro for his heavy-handed swordplay. Nevertheless, the seemingly constantly bored Mihawk is intrigued by Zoro's effort, and asks, "What drives you? Why do you fight so hard when you cannot win? You're a weakling." And of course this sounds offensive, but from his expression it looks like Mihawk is actually curious and not trying to insult Zoro. Finally, Mihawk decides to quit toying around and stab Zoro. He asks Zoro why doesn't he retreat, and Zoro responds, "I can't. If I retreat even one step, my vow, my ambition, everything I care about will be shattered, and all my dreams will be lost forever." End quote. Zoro explains that he prefers death to defeat, and Mihawk notes Zoro's impressive strength of spirit, how he'd rather die than give up. He even asks for Zoro's name. Zoro gives it. Mihawk compliments Zoro's spirit by saying he'll remember his name. He adds it's been a while since he's met someone so brave. He decides to honor the swordsman's code and pulls out his real sword. He says he'll send Zoro to his death with this black blade, the finest in the world. Zoro decides this is it, his last chance, greatest in the world or death. He prepares to use a move, and Mihawk actually sweats. It's possible that he got a glimpse of Zoro's Conqueror's Haki here, but it's more so a sign of potential than anything to worry about in this fight, and Mihawk predictably wins. 2 of Zoro's swords break. He accepts that he's outmatched and offers himself to be taken down by Mihawk, saying wounds on the back are a swordsman's shame. The usually stoic Mihawk smiles widely at this and says magnificent, before cutting down Zoro with his blade. It may look bad, but Mihawk actually held back, as he thinks don't be in a hurry to die, young warrior. When a worried Luffy shows up, Mihawk compliments him, saying he did well to let Zoro fight his own battle to the end. He then adds, "Don't worry, I left him alive." He tells Zoro to discover himself, to see the world, and to grow strong. He says that however long it may take, he will await Zoro at the top. He tells him to strive with your whole heart and mind to best this blade, fierce one. Strive to surpass me, Roronoa Zoro, end quote. Zeph is wondering why Mihawk would say something like that, suggesting it's out of character, and by extension, it hypes up Zoro and the potential Mihawk sees in Zoro even more. Zoro vows to Luffy that he will never lose again from now to the day he beats Mihawk to become the greatest swordsman, and Mihawk smiles upon hearing this. He hopes to encounter Luffy and Zoro again someday. He also decides he doesn't care about Krieg's head anymore, saying he's had enough fun for now, so he shall take a nap. Krieg tries to attack him again, but Mihawk is unaffected and even calls Krieg a slow learner. Mihawk was so impressive that Krieg couldn't help but think that Mihawk broke the ship by using some devil fruit power. We eventually find out that he was famous even before the Great Pirate Age that began 24 years ago. In fact, he was present at Gold D. Rogers' execution. The Marine Hunter title probably came from the fact that he defeated many Marines in his earlier years. He challenged strong swordsman after strong swordsman until there was no one left to challenge his title of greatest swordsman. He saw a worthy rival in Shanks and dueled him multiple times. Even Whitebeard couldn't help but remember one of their legendary battles, saying, and I quote, "There aren't many who speak of the legend anymore. Your duel with Hawkeye is still fresh in my memory," end quote. Sometime after Roger's death, Mihawk joined the Warlord system, and like I said, my assumption would be that the Marines wanted to deal with the Marine Hunter, and killing him was probably unrealistic or would take way more manpower than they could spare, so they made it well worth his while to become a Warlord. It should be noted that he was offered this position as an individual without a crew or underlings, which is very unique and speaks to his insane power as an individual. He also stopped dueling Shanks eventually after Shanks lost his arm protecting Luffy. We learned this during chapter 96 when he goes to visit Shanks on a certain island. As some of the pirates get spooked by Mihawk, he tells them not to get excited. He's here for their captain, Shanks. He also comments to himself that camping on this island is careless of Shanks. When they meet, Shanks says that Hawkeye showing up is unexpected and that he's in a bad mood. He wonders if he's here to challenge him, but Mihawk replies that he doesn't challenge one-armed has-beens. Talking like this to Yonko Shanks is in itself noteworthy, and of course, the implication is that Mihawk doesn't challenge him anymore because it's beneath him. He's not the worthy rival he was before. This exchange has been a point of contention for many One Piece fans. Obviously, Shanks is strong, and we know he should have gotten stronger since losing his arm and becoming a Yonko. But Mihawk is putting himself above Shanks, saying he's no longer even worth challenging. The question is, how much is this Mihawk's true feelings and how much is it some friendly teasing between friends? We do get more info in the latest chapters that will shed more light on this, so we will get back to it later. Mihawk actually came this time because he found an interesting pirate, namely Luffy, that Shanks had told him about. Shanks smiles upon learning that Luffy has joined the pirate world and invites Mihawk to drink with him. This friendly dynamic seems to characterize Shanks and Mihawk's relationship these days, since Shanks lost his arm and stopped being viewed by Mihawk as a rival. Later, during chapter 234, Mihawk joins a meeting about Crocodile between the two great powers of the Seven Warlords and the High Command of the Navy. People didn't even expect to see him there, suggesting he had special privileges even among the warlords. But he says he's just here as an interested bystander. He's a little curious about the pirates they'll be discussing, and of course the discussion is about Crocodile and who will replace him, which ends up being Blackbeard. Here, one of the pirates that Mihawk may have been curious about was Crocodile, and in the first chapters Mihawk appeared, Buggy was in the cover art. So it's interesting how the cross-guild organization was foreshadowed so early on when you really think about it. Then we jump to the Marineford arc, where Warlord Mihawk answered the Navy's call to aid in the war against the Whitebeard pirates. Of course, as usual, he had his own reasons for joining the war. When Whitebeard shows up and Mihawk pulls out his sword, Doflamingo asks, "Are you really going to fight?" To which Mihawk responds, "I just want to measure the true distance between that man and us." And keep in mind, Whitebeard was called the strongest man in the world and the one closest to the One Piece, although this is an older, sicker, and weaker version of him compared to his prime. Mihawk launches an attack with the swing of his sword from a very long distance at Whitebeard. Diamond Jozu is the one to stop it from reaching Whitebeard, but it's noteworthy that Mihawk's slash was still called the strongest in the world, aka the world's most powerful sword slash. I mean, that is a hype statement right there, and you know Shanks has definitely released some sword slashes, but more on that later. Despite the hype statements, Mihawk didn't really wow us as much as we might have expected from a rival of Shanks during the war. The fact that one of Whitebeard's commanders deflected Mihawk's attack without Whitebeard needing to do anything was a bit anti-hype, even if we should keep in mind that Jozu has a naturally effective Devil Fruit against slashes, and that Mihawk did attack from a very long distance away and without breaking a sweat. He definitely didn't look like someone giving it his all, but more like someone testing the waters. Later, when Mihawk discovers that Luffy is Dragon's son, he is not shocked, even saying that nothing would surprise him at this point about Luffy. Before attacking Luffy, he says to himself, "Sorry, red-haired, but this power knows no restraint." He's clearly close enough to Shanks to apologize to him for attacking one of his friends. Mihawk says, "Now Fate, how will you deal with this heaven-sent boy? Will his life end or will he escape this black blade?" It's almost like he's challenging the universe to save Luffy because he's so sure he'll end him right now. It's funny, chapter 561 is called Luffy vs. Mihawk, but it's such a clickbait title. We know Luffy is not strong enough to take on Mihawk at this point, and he even says himself he doesn't have time to fight someone that strong since he has to save Ace. Despite his attempt to avoid him, Mihawk's Hawkeyes lock in on him from a distance and he launches an attack that cuts Luffy and clearly hurts him. He notes matter-of-factly to Luffy that he's not out of his range yet. Mihawk closes the distance in no time and now Luffy is in big trouble. Mihawk one-shots two newcomer sword wielders effortlessly. Luffy prepares to attack and then stops, sensing that if he launched the attack, his hands would have been cut off. Mihawk even compliments him, saying he's much calmer than expected. Luffy is not in a situation right now where he can just throw all he's got at the enemy. That worked on early antagonists, but he has to be more strategic and careful here, and to his credit, he is. He runs and dodges rather than thinking he can overpower Mihawk. In one instance, he dodges an attack that ends up slicing clean through a giant iceberg, and it subsequently falls. Not gonna lie, that was very impressive and cool to see. And just a side note that will be relevant when we get to Cross Guild, during all this mayhem, Doflamingo asks Crocodile to team up, and Crocodile, despite being an earlier antagonist, says, "Don't pretend we're equals. Maybe you want to be my henchman." Pretty big flex indeed, and one worthy of a character who would later on rise to extreme relevancy once again. But for now, we're following Mihawk and Luffy. Although Mihawk isn't breaking a sweat, he does repeatedly attack Luffy, and every time Luffy succeeds in dodging him. However, as Mihawk points out, while dodging, Luffy is only getting further and further from Ace, aka he's being pushed back by the attacks. Luffy then tries to use Buggy as a shield and distraction. As we know, Buggy doesn't get cut, so Mihawk's attacks have no effect against him either. Buggy blasts Mihawk with a Muggy Ball, but Mihawk just deflects it back into Buggy's face. Some YouTube comments even joked when Cross Guild was first brought up that Mihawk submitted to Buggy because he was powerless to cut him in this exchange, even though Mihawk obviously still got the better of the exchange and Buggy was hit by his own explosive. Then, after Marco tells him to, Mihawk gets intercepted by Vista, the Flower Blade, leader of the 5th Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. Mihawk pays him a big compliment and lets us know he's a big deal when he says, "Only an ignoramus wouldn't know of Vista." Then Mihawk drops the famous quote about Luffy, saying it's not his powers or techniques. He possesses some quality that makes people want to help him, and in these waters, that is the most formidable power of all. Vista succeeds in holding off Mihawk and Luffy escapes. So again, compared to what Shanks is about to do, Mihawk doesn't seem that impressive here. But it should be noted that battles do last long in One Piece, like how Yamato could hold off Kaido for a while, and just because they last longer doesn't mean that the two fighters are that close in strength. In other words, I don't think we should assume that Vista and Mihawk are similar levels just because the former succeeds in holding him off for a while. Eventually Mihawk says they should settle this later, and Vista agrees, saying it seems that would benefit both of them. Later, when Luffy and Ivankov try to reach Ace, Mihawk again goes after Luffy. Das Bones blocks the attack under Crocodile's orders. However, to Mihawk's credit, he does cut down Das Bones immediately. Then Crocodile intercepts his future business partner, and that again gives Luffy a chance to escape. Notably, there does seem to be respect between these two, since Mihawk, as with Vista, uses Crocodile's name. So it's clear that Luffy could only escape Mihawk because of all the people that interfered. Even though we wouldn't consider these characters anywhere near Shanks' level, they do succeed in holding Mihawk back from Luffy. And again, to hype up Crocodile, he tells Mihawk he's not in a good mood right now, so Hawkeye had better watch out. First his comments to Doflamingo, and now this, Crocodile is definitely talking big. And some people mentioned that Crocodile doesn't have Haki because it hasn't been focused on, even armament Haki, since we didn't see him use it per se, but that's hard to believe. Although Haki hadn't really been developed in the story at this point, in order to counter Mihawk's Black Blade, I feel like Crocodile would have had to had at least armament Haki, but to be fair, it hasn't been confirmed. I just feel like someone as strong as Crocodile has to have it. Then of course we have the famous moment where Shanks and his crew stop the war, and Mihawk's response to Shanks' arrival was that he never agreed to fight Shanks and he stopped fighting right there on the spot. Now to be fair, Mihawk wasn't sweating or beaten up or anything at this point, so it's easy to say he didn't give it his all or had more to give, etc. But one can't deny that when Shanks showed up, no one would accept his challenge, and multiple sub-Yonko characters like Vista and Crocodile did succeed in holding Mihawk back, and he couldn't easily deal with them. So at this point, Shanks seems a lot stronger, even if it should be noted that the reaction Shanks got should not only be attributed to the threat he posed, but also the threat of his entire crew has to be taken into account when looking at how everyone responded. After the war, Mihawk went back to his island, and eventually Zoro showed up. Zoro fought against the human drills, aka baboons or monkeys that imitate people, and Zoro had trouble with them in the beginning, but after hearing what happened to Luffy at Marineford, he felt like he had to make it to sea again. Mihawk told him the baboons can be a handful and that Zoro can come to Mihawk's castle, since the monkeys never get close. Another subtle nod to Mihawk's power probably, but Zoro refuses. Eventually, when realizing that Luffy wants them to now meet in 2 years, not 3 days, Zoro goes and bows down to Mihawk, begging the sword master to teach Zoro what he knows. Mihawk is disappointed at first that he would beg his enemy to instruct him. He asks him if he has no pride. Mihawk tells Zoro to leave at once, saying he'll have no business with a wretch like him. He continues, "It seems I overestimated you. What are you doing? You're only humiliating yourself," end quote. Zoro responds he wants to get stronger, to which Mihawk says, "Thrashed by the monkeys and unable to go out to sea. I have nothing to teach a man who can't finish what he starts, end quote. Then we get a cool twist where Zoro says he beat the monkeys to Mihawk's shock, and that Mihawk is the only one left to take down. Zoro says he's not stupid enough to think he can take down Mihawk yet. He tells Mihawk he wants the strongest swordsman in the world to instruct him so that Zoro can surpass him one day. And to this, again, the stoic Mihawk breaks into uncharacteristic laughter. He says, "You want me to teach you the sword so that one day you can take my head? You're a strange one. You're still a shameless fool, so you value something more than your own pride," end quote. And then he agrees to instruct him once Zoro's wounds heal. He also thinks to himself that Zoro is a clumsy fool, and when a man of his caliber abandons his pride, it is always for the sake of another. And in this case, we can assume it's for Luffy's sake. I love this exchange because again, it shows how confident Mihawk is in his own power. He already let Zoro live during the Baratie arc so that he could become stronger and challenge him again. But now he's taking it further and offering to train a much stronger Zoro who wants to defeat him. It's a huge flex on Mihawk's part that he takes Zoro on as a student, not even worried about the fact that Zoro wants to defeat him. Truly legendary behavior from Mihawk. So Mihawk went on to train him for 2 years and taught Zoro how to imbue his swords with haki. And although some people claim that Zoro may already be able to beat Mihawk, I think that the conversation shouldn't even be on the table until Zoro succeeds in turning his swords into permanent black blades as Mihawk did. During the Whole Cake Island arc, we learned through a cover story that Mihawk was able to get the monkeys to not only leave him alone, as we know, but also to help him till the old battleground of the former Muggy Kingdom. Another nod to his strength, since he was able to get those aggressive and wild human drills to submit to his authority. And so we get to Wano Country, the arc that went a long way in re-hyping up Mihawk after, as I explained, he left something to be desired at Marineford, especially when compared to Yonko Shanks, his longtime rival slash friend. After the world government disbanded the warlord system, the Marines came after Mihawk, asking him to surrender. Initially, Mihawk said he felt the thrill of excitement again since it had been so long since he was chased. However, despite being strong enough to not get caught, thrill eventually turned into annoyance. And so comes in Cross Guild. Crocodile calls Mihawk one day. Despite clashing at Marineford, these two clearly have enough respect for one another to hear each other out. It's at this point that Mihawk tells Crocodile the Navy has his island surrounded at the moment, and so he needs to pick up and move base, as bothersome as it may be. It's at this point that Crocodile says that's why he should come over to Crocodile's side. With their combined names, the Navy would have to sit up and take notice. Crocodile even points out that Hawkeye was known as the Naval Hunter aka Marine Hunter once, which is such a good detail again. Although Pirate Hunter sounds cool, Marine Hunter is way cooler. You'd have to be insanely strong to get away with being a solo Marine Hunter, and beyond that, as mentioned, it seems like they couldn't deal with him, and so they offered him the position of warlord to get him to stop. And ironically, Mihawk and Crocodile find common ground in the fact that they both have distrust for others. It's telling that Crocodile wanted Mihawk to be his partner, even though they've clashed before. We also find out that Mihawk's bounty is a whopping 3.59 billion, which is insane when you consider he's not even a Yonko. In fact, even though the government thinks that he's following Buggy, they still gave Mihawk the bigger bounty, something we've never seen before as far as I remember. Furthermore, the Marines didn't just call him the strongest swordsman in the world, they also said that he has greater sword skill than even Shanks. And it is at this point that once again, you can start to make the argument that Mihawk is stronger than Shanks as individuals. Again, it's a gray area and we don't know a lot of details for certain. And Shanks has been hyped up more than Mihawk, you can't deny that. But it's completely justifiable now to raise the possibility that Mihawk is stronger. Think about it. Mihawk and Shanks dueled with swords, and Mihawk got the title of the strongest swordsman. Mihawk said he would no longer fight a one-armed has-been. The Marines pointed out that he had greater sword skill than Shanks, and his bounty is not far off from Shanks's, despite the fact that he's not a Yonko. If he were viewed as a Yonko at the head of a formidable crew like Shanks, it is easy to imagine Mihawk's bounty being even higher than Shanks's. And arguments that Shanks didn't use haki or something like that in their fights makes no sense compared to what we've been taught to expect from the series. Characters always use haki in fights. We never saw Mihawk push that hard, so it's completely possible that even he has very impressive Conqueror's haki as well. Keep in mind, as a non-Yonko, Mihawk had a bounty that at the time of the reveal was, as far as we knew, higher than 3 Yonko bounties, but with chapter 1059, we find out that Blackbeard has moved ahead to be even closer to Shanks at 3.996 billion. Still, it can't be denied that Mihawk is clearly Yonko level, and although I think Shanks is viewed as a bigger threat because he controls his powerful crew as well, I think it's very possible that Mihawk could win in a one-on-one fight. Albeit when you compare Mihawk moments, like not being able to get Luffy because Vista and Crocodile got in the way, to Shanks moments when he stopped a war and scared off Admiral Greenbow with just his Haki, I completely understand why there are people making the counter argument that Shanks is stronger, and there may well be a loophole for how Oda plans to sidestep the whole Mihawk being the strongest swordsman and Shanks being a swordsman thing. However, more than ever now, the argument can be made that Mihawk could win, although it would obviously be one of those long epic fights like with Sakazuki and Kuzan. And keep in mind, Mihawk is pretty much a Yonko now. As we found out recently, Buggy is a figurehead, and Mihawk and Crocodile are pretty much the ones in charge. And even with that being said, it was Mihawk who made the executive decision to let Buggy be the face of the organization, and Crocodile went along with his decision, suggesting that Mihawk, the one with the highest bounty, is the one calling the shots when he wants to. And that wraps up everything we know about Mihawk up to this point and shows how there were moments that made us question if he could really be as strong as Shanks, and there were moments as well that suggested he's stronger one-on-one at least. However, even Mihawk acknowledges that one-on-one is not the most dangerous power. The most dangerous power is when people want to help you, as he noticed with Luffy. And this was reaffirmed when he decided to join Cross Guild rather than continuing on alone. Allies are powerful and Shanks always had more, but Mihawk has started to surround himself with some as well. And again, the only way I can explain the fact that Vista and Crocodile were able to hold back a Yonko level character is by pointing to the fact that fights in One Piece are not like fights in other series. Even if the gap is big, as I mentioned with Kaido and Yamato, fights can still take a while. So in that case, it's not all that surprising that someone who could potentially beat Shanks eventually would get held back by weaker but not weak characters like Vista and Crocodile. But let me know your thoughts, have an open mind, and tell me your honest thoughts about the famous Mihawk versus Shanks debate. The point with this video was not to give a definitive answer to something Oda has tiptoed around and yet chosen not to reveal, but to retrace Mihawk's steps so that we have a better idea of his power and to spark discussion. I, for my part, have to admit that chapter 1058 definitely influenced the way I personally view the Mihawk versus Shanks debate. Now, channel the Pirate King within and smash that like button if you enjoyed the video and want to keep the One Piece videos coming. Legend has it that YouTube will reward you with on-screen fireworks straight from Wano. Make this the video you subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications, or you will miss future One Piece videos and updates. While you wait for the next One Piece video to drop, feel free to check out my large and growing One Piece playlist that includes videos on all Mythical Zone users, all admirals, an hour-long video like this one about Shanks, and much more. Link to that is in the description on screen right now. And until next time, see you, Space Cowboys.